Alright, well thank you everyone for coming, and we'll go inside quickly, I promise. I just wanted to start outside so you can kind of get a sense of the facade and the three different phases of building. So we're looking at the 1924 building right here in front of us. To the left is the 1988 edition, or at least the very front of it. And in a second we'll go around the side and see the 1977 edition. I also wanted to start out here because this is the first thing most people see of the library from Main Street, and these front steps have been a huge challenge for us over the years, especially in winter because they're very difficult to maintain. The way the cement angles, it angles in, so even when you shovel it, the remaining snow and ice melts, but it doesn't drain, it like refreezes. So we made the decision a few years ago to just not bother in the winter because it was too hard and it was too dangerous. There was a liability. So now, unfortunately, what people see is unmaintained, steep, snowy winter steps with this sign out here, and it's not immediately apparent where they're supposed to go in, and it just doesn't feel very welcoming. Even in the summer, when the steps are open, I personally feel, and I think many other people feel, that this really beautiful historic facade isn't the most welcoming to everyone. So not everyone in our community looks at this and thinks, oh, that's a building that's for me, with the big columns and the fancy entrance and the imposing steps. So that's always kind of on our mind, that this is the face we put forward to the community, and it maybe isn't the most welcoming to everyone. Certainly people that have accessibility issues would not be able to make it up those stairs. Okay, so well, any questions about this? Okay.
The steps are concrete, is that what you were saying?
Yeah. Okay, we'll move to the side entrance for us to all stand in there. So this is where 75% of our traffic comes in, even in the summer when both entrances are open. This is our ADA accessible door, but you'll notice it's still pretty narrow. So if you're in a motorized wheelchair or you have strollers or children, it's kind of difficult to get in. Once you enter, you'll notice it's very unwelcoming. The first thing you see is not a friendly librarian or really clear signage or even books. You just see like a split level staircase. You either have to go up or down, or you have to get into the elevator. The elevator itself is pretty small, and it has two different doors. So you enter here, and then you need to maneuver yourself to enter or exit a separate door on a different floor, which we've gotten feedback is really difficult for some people if they have push cart, again, strollers, push carts, wheelchairs, stuff like that. We have safety concerns because there's no librarian to greet you. We have no sight lines, so people can come in and out, and we have no idea who's entering the building. Someone could come in and go upstairs and we would have no idea they're here. More likely, someone can enter the building and go right down into the restrooms, which are single use and they lock, obviously. And so that's a security risk. We do have non-restroom activities taking place in the restrooms, I guess, is how I would put it. And that's not ideal. It happens regularly, and it's steps away from the children's room. So just on every level, it's not ideal. Ideally, we would have like big automatic doors that are easy to get into. We would have space, for people to wait for their ride inside where it's warm, where we could all be right now if we had that space. We'd have space for a 24/7 book drop, which we don't have now. We'd have more public restrooms, but they'd be multi-use, single gender, for safety issues, and you would walk in and you would know that you're in a library, and you would know how to get where you're going, and you would see someone that's greeting you that's happy to see you. Okay, so we'll walk in and you can see it for yourself, and then we'll reconvene in the lobby where it's warm. Okay, all right, so we're back in the night, we entered through the 77 edition, and now we're in the 1924 building, the original building. We call this the library lobby, but it's really, I think of it as kind of the heart of the library. This is where we store our adult new materials. So fiction is over here, and new nonfiction is over here. It's where we have our reference desk, so people return and check out books here. They ask reference questions. They ask about upcoming programs. They use our public access computers to search the collection. It's also a community space, so this is where I would say the majority of like the spontaneous meetups and interactions happen. Neighbors see each other and chat for a few minutes. We have a table right behind you guys where we usually have a puzzle or some other kind of craft, so people will come in usually without planning to sit down and stay, but before they know it, 20 minutes have gone by and they're working on this puzzle. And then someone else sits down and then they're working on it together, which is really nice to see. So lots of impromptu community gatherings happening in here. And then we also have just some comfortable seating. People will come in with a coffee, and we have newspapers, local newspapers, so a lot of people read the newspaper there in the morning. When this was designed in 1924, well, so let's see. The 1924 building stops at that wall with the painting of the newsboy on it. So this used to be the entire library, and it was a great design at the time because you've got the desk in the center, so the librarian can see everyone and everyone can kind of see each other, so there's no safety concerns. The issue for us is just that we've added onto it in a way that sight lines to the rest of the building are essentially non-existent. That is really one of the big safety challenges with this building, is that this is where our staff are, and you're going to see most of the rest of the building, and we don't have eyes there, so we don't know what's going on. And we can't respond, if someone has a health issue or something, which does happen, we might not know about it. We have 2 staff members that have their regular desk out here because we don't have enough space for staff throughout the building. It's a challenge for them because, as you can imagine, it can get this is one of the loudest areas of the library. It's not right now, we got kind of lucky that it's quiet. But it can be very distracting to work out here, and patrons don't always realize that those librarians are not on the desk, is what we say. If they're on the reference desk, they're here to help you. If they're at their personal desk, they're not, but people don't know that, and so they'll wander back there and just start up a conversation and ask for help. Let me just check my notes and see if there's anything else I had to say about this space. I don't think so. Any questions about the lobby? Oh, Joe's pointing to this little space. So we have 2 little, I think these were originally spaces for coats, but I'm not 100% sure. We use them now. The one on the left is a book sale operated by the Friends of the Library. And the one on the right is where we store back issues of newspapers. Not the most functional spaces, but yeah. And then, of course, this is where during the summer or during the non-snowy months, people do enter through this door, just not that many people.
But it's better than one. Yes, sure. Yes, sure.
Oh, and it's our art gallery space, so we feature community art throughout the year. Usually every 3 or 4 weeks we change the, we have a rotating exhibit plan. Any questions about this space? Okay, great. We're going to go back into the staff space. We'll do it quickly because it's kind of cramped, but I want you guys to be able to see what we're working with. Okay, so we have 3 full-time staff that work in here. This is Royce McGrath, everyone. Royce, these are hello. So my office and then 2 additional staff members. It's also where we store all of our records. It's where we keep all of our office supplies. And then we have 2 sort of shared workspaces. One is right behind Andrea and Diantha. We call it our discharge room. That's where books that are getting delivered get sorted onto carts, and then the carts roll out to different parts of the library as appropriate.
How often does that happen? The books come in and...
But all day, every day.
Okay.
But we usually, a lot get returned overnight.
Okay.
So when we walked in through the side entrance, you might have seen like a little book drop door on the outside. So at night, we put a cart underneath that and we unlock the book drop and people return books after hours. So when we come in the morning, there's usually a whole bunch of books to deal with. So we bring them into that room, sort them onto the carts, and then the carts get wheeled out in the morning. And then throughout the day, people keep returning books, but we're able to deal with those as they come in.
But it's not possible for us at present to have a book drop outside the library that's available all day. If you want to return a book, you've got to come inside.
Yeah, and we don't, a lot of libraries have a 24-hour book drop somewhere at an entrance, and we don't, and we hear about it frequently. People would really like us to have that. We used to have a 24-hour book drop that was accessible through the back garden, but it emptied into I don't know what you call it, like the closet where the breakers are and the elevator closet is. And we got in trouble with the fire marshal because we had all these books blocking access to the elevator room, so we can't do that anymore. And people want to know why can't you just have a 24-hour book drop? It seems so simple, and it does seem so simple, but we just have nowhere to put it. So anyways, books come in all day long, they get shelved all day long, but the morning is the really busy period. And then right back here we have another shared workspace, which is our book processing area. So new books that we purchase, sorry, maybe I didn't make that clear. Books being returned by patrons who have checked them out go in this room over here. New books that we've just purchased go in this room down there. And when I finish talking, you guys can all take a look down there if you like. So we purchase about $100,000 worth of books a year. Thousands and thousands of books coming in all year. We do not have enough space for them. We don't have enough space to unpack them. We don't have a good refuse system, like there's nowhere to put the cardboard. It gets totally out of control. And the worst thing about that book processing room is that you can only get in and out by going up and down stairs. And books come in and out on carts. So it's really hard. If you imagine one of these carts filled with books, lifting that up is really hard. And we do it all day, regular. I mean, it's a pain and a waste of resources. And I think just poor planning, because that room was always designed to be a book processing room. There were always going to be carts. I don't know why it's only accessible by steps.
So that's part of the 1977 edition, right? So it kind of got added on.
Yeah.
But perhaps emphasizes some of the level floor issues that we have in the space.
Yeah. So ideally, we would have, were you raising your hand or just feeling the low ceilings? Yeah.
Trying to get a sense.
Yeah. Ideally, all three of these rooms could be one. It'd be great to have just like a big, open, flexible space for staff to work in. All on one level so we can roll carts around as needed. That's not what we have now, obviously, but that's what we would love to have at some point. And we just need more space. We need more space for our office supplies and our record storage and stuff like that. And of course, ideally, we would bring the two librarians that are right out there in here so that they are not constantly being bombarded by the public. Any questions? If anyone wants to, you're welcome to go poke your head in the book processing room. Our staff restroom is also right here. So.
I would just note, I think our computer servers are just in that closet now. They're a lot quieter than they used to be, but nevertheless essential to what we do.
Is there other part-time staff besides, you mentioned 3 full-time?
Oh, yeah, thank you. That's a good question. So we actually have 8 full-time staff and 4 part-time regular staff that are like 20 hours a week. And then we have a whole host of substitutes and work-study students from the 2 local colleges. So we have multiple levels of problems with space for staff. We don't have adequate space for our full-time staff. We definitely don't have a space for part-time staff to come in and store. You know, if you're here 20 hours a week, you might not need a dedicated workstation, but you need a place to put your coat and your shoes and, you know, your lunch and stuff like that. We don't have lockers or anything like that for college students that come in to work a few hours and need to drop off their backpack and stuff like that. So it gets pretty messy in here throughout the day. And in our break room, it gets pretty messy.
And we might point out that this is where the staff has weekly meetings, often.
Yeah, we stand around this table because we don't have a conference room or a meeting room space for us. And the one for the public is usually booked, and we like to keep it available for the public because that's the whole point. We live to serve. Okay. Okay, this is our teen room. I almost feel embarrassed saying that because it is essentially a closet. It's a book closet for teens. This is where we store their collection. It's always a little difficult, I think, to know where to put a teen collection because teen materials are very attractive to adults. The reading levels are pretty close, but teens don't really like to be close to the adult areas, but they really don't want to be close to the kid areas. So that's always a little bit tricky to know where in a library to locate the teen collection, but this has worked pretty well in terms of a location. It is not big enough. We don't have enough space for their collection, and we don't have any space for them to socialize or do homework. Ideally, we would have plenty of space for, you know, comfortable seating for them to read quietly, tables for them to play games at and just hang out, do homework, things like that. We are really fortunate that we have a teen and tween librarian. A lot of libraries in Vermont can't afford that, and Middlebury supports us generously, so we're able to have a ton of programs and resources that cater directly to teens. So we do have a really big teen user group, and we know that they would be here a lot more if they had actual comfortable spaces to be. So it kills me that we can't offer that, but hopefully in the future we'll be able to. Questions about teen spaces? Okay. Okay, we call this our reference room. This is in the 1988 edition. It used to be filled with all of our reference resources. Our physical reference resources now fit on those 3 shelves over there. That's the one part of our collection that has really downsized over the past few decades. Most reference resources, or at least most reference resources a public library needs, are digital these days. So we have been able to free up a lot of space in here. We now use it for back issues of periodicals, and we recently just put up all these puzzles. We really don't like to have collections on these shelves because they're not super accessible. You have to reach over, and we really don't want to encourage people to use this ladder ever. Which is from, I believe, the old Lazarus department store. I don't know how it came to be here, but we have it. So this space is used for quiet study, distance learning, remote work. People sit here and read. People charge their devices at the charging station. As far as our library spaces go, I would say this is one of the more flexible ones. I guess we're kind of hampered by these columns, which make it hard to utilize the full space. But we're able to move the furniture around, and we have concerts in here on Saturdays, which are really popular. One of the big challenges, sight lines. Another big challenge is, noise management, the acoustics. This is a place where people like to work quietly, but it's right next to the loudest space in the library. And I'm sure we could do something with like noise dampening stuff, but we haven't done that. And lighting is also a problem in here. It's really comfortable when it's bright outside, but once it gets dark, it's pretty dark in here. It's uncomfortable.
Have you guys done any upgrades for your heating? You know,
No. I could not say we've done any upgrades. We have done like little patches on our existing boiler system. So we have a steam system and a hot water system. The 1924 and 1970 buildings are on steam heat, and the 1988 is hot water. And our boiler is really old and really unreliable. And about 4 years ago, we replaced 4 out of the 7 cast iron sections of the boiler, and that was supposed to buy us a few more years, basically to get to where we are now. So it feels pretty touch and go. Our dream is to have like a cold climate heat pump system that's all electric and more efficient. We have it sold. I mean, when I think of our heat system, I just am happy when it turns on. But I know some buildings like have control over how hot and cold it is in different spaces and like responsive thermostats and stuff like that. So we dare to dream someday.
What about the air handling system?
Well, we have AC units, but I think are 20. I think they're 20 years or older at this point.
Mhm.
Oh, there's one right there. And Dennis Newton does a great job servicing them and keeping them going, but every year he tells us it's maybe the last year. They don't bring in fresh air from the outside, so there is no fresh air. That's obviously a safety concern and just uncomfortable to know that you're, there's a lot of people in this building, and so during cold and flu season, it'd be nice to have air exchange,
Do this unit, and there's one back there I saw, do they actually cool more than this space, or do they cool the whole, like, are you have a lot of thermal issues where people are uncomfortable and hot and stuff?
Oh
like
yeah,
that?
yes. The heating and cooling is very uneven.
Yeah.
And part of that is probably just the systems are old and inefficient, and part of it is that I think we have 11 AC units throughout the building, and at any given time, like 7 or 8 of them are working. So,
Got it.
yeah. There is a separate cooling system for the community meeting room, which does have some level of air exchange.
And the future vision would be a fully air conditioner.
Yes,
So,
yeah. We are definitely a place that people come to stay warm in the winter and cool in the summer. And as we have more and more hot days in our, warming future, we know that public libraries are going to be really important cooling the centers in the summer, especially in Vermont, where most people don't have AC at home. So that's going to be really important for us to keep in mind. Any other questions at this point? All right, we're not going to go far. Good. Okay. So this is our computer lab and our adult nonfiction stacks and DVDs. There used to be even more computers in here. We took it to like 50% during COVID, and we found that we really don't need as many computers as we have now. They're regularly used, but very rarely are all of them in use at the same time, as more and more people have individual devices. So ideally, we would have maybe a smaller computer lab, but computers with more privacy. People use these computers for all sorts of things, including, applying for jobs or stuff that would require you to use your social security number or telemedicine. And so it's really uncomfortable to be sitting here and having someone just like look over your shoulder. One of the big problems with this space are these steel trusses. My understanding is that they hold up, they hold up the floor and the ceiling. I'm sure that makes sense to all of you. This is your field. To me, I'm like, how does it do both? I don't know how buildings work, but my understanding is that they're very essential to keeping this building together. and it makes it really hard to envision this space being anything other than stacks. In the past, when previous groups have thought about how can we renovate this building, this was always a stumbling block for them, because people would suggest, well, why don't you bring the kids up here and make this the kids' room, or consolidate, move the collection somewhere else. And it was always like, well, this really can't be anything other than what it is, because it has these huge steel trusses all the way down. Not much else to say about this area.
Well, I think something that might be worth mentioning is that we have not, the Ilsley 100 project team, who's the group of people who were tasked by the select board to kind of move this forward, have not said definitively, a solution would definitely involve taking down the additions, or would not definitely involve taking down the additions. The previous 2014 to 2017 building committee under advisement said, no, this 1988 edition has to come down. Some controversy about that in the community a little bit, but so that's a big non-answer for you, isn't it, about what to do with this space? But
yeah, I mean, I think, in my opinion, the best library spaces are big and open and really easily reconfigured. So if there was a way to reuse this space and have it be more flexible, that would be awesome.
But given the fact that we don't know what a library is going to look like 20, 30, 50 years from now, flexibility is desirable.
Okay, we'll head upstairs and we'll talk even more.
Oh.
Okay. So this is the adult fiction stacks.
176.
One of the problems with this space is that the stacks, it's the way the stacks are oriented. Ideally, libraries the rows should run perpendicular to the sight lines. So anyone walking down here should be able to see all the way to the back and should have a really good sense of how many people are in this space. Instead, when you walk in, you have no idea who's up here. This can be really unsettling for some library patrons. It's definitely unsettling for me at the end of the night when I'm closing up and it's dark and I have to walk all the way down and see who's in here, and it can kind of be jarring when someone's hanging out. People also use this space for quiet study. And they also, so because we don't have staff up here, and because there's a lot of privacy, which there really shouldn't be, we also have a lot of, again, I'll say non-library usages of this space. So this is where we find the most beer cans and stuff like that. This is where if someone wants to sleep, which is not allowed here because we can't tell just by looking at someone if they're asleep or they're having an overdose or another kind of medical issue, this is where people will come to try and sleep. So it's really far away from any staff, and there's no sight lines, so that's a big problem for us. The shelving, I don't know who picked it out all those years ago. This is really intense library shelving. It's like all bracketed to each other and the ceiling. It's like earthquake proof, really intense. We don't need this shelving. It's very inflexible. I mean, there are library shelves now that are on wheels that you could, we could push them to the side and use this as a programming space or something like that on a Friday night. Well, ideally, some libraries can do that. We don't use the top shelf and we don't use the bottom shelf for accessibility purposes. Not only is it hard for some people to bend down, or impossible for some people to reach up this high, but there's also lots of studies that show in both retail and libraries that the materials in these middle sections circulate more. So it's just best practice not to have shelving that's super high or super low, unless you're like a collegiate reference library or something and you need to really maximize your space. So our collection is at a good size right now. I don't see the physical collection growing or shrinking for the next decade or so. beyond that, obviously, it's really hard to say what's going to happen, but we don't really need more shelving, we just need better shelving.
Yeah, making good, I like that.
And so that's one thing that we're hoping to achieve with this project.
Thank you, Mike.
What is the size of the collection? You know, I know it's in different categories, but
The physical collection's about 55,000, and it's been bigger, and it's obviously been smaller, so it fluctuates, but I think we're at a really good size right now. We're at a one in, one out point, so any new book we buy, we have to deaccession a book, which is not necessarily a bad thing. And pretty much every book you see on the shelves has circulated within the last 3 years. So, you know, if we had double the space, we would say, you know, we'll keep books that haven't circulated in 8 years. We don't have unlimited space, and I don't think it's necessary. So yeah, I think the collection's at a pretty good size right now. Certain parts of the collection are shrinking, certain parts are growing. When we get down to the children's room, that's a collection that's growing, and we can talk about that. But overall, I think 50 to 60,000 physical materials is about what we're looking at for the next, I would feel comfortable saying the next 10 years. And I would also feel comfortable saying people will always want some physical collection.
Would your teen collection grow if you had more space?
Yes, yeah. Probably not significantly, but a little bit. But, so even though the number of volumes in the collection might not grow, it would be nice to have a little bit more space for the collection so that we can have more display shelving, and so that we don't, in the teen room, you'll notice we do use the top shelf
Right.
and the bottom shelf, because we just don't have a choice if we want to fit it all in there. So we'd like to have more space for the teen collection, even though we don't necessarily want it to grow all that much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
do you have an e-reader program?
We have a ton of digital materials, digital ebooks and audiobooks. We used to loan out Kindles,
Yeah.
and it just wasn't very popular. We've talked lately about trying to do that again, especially as we start thinking about relocating during construction, being able to make the digital collections even more accessible to people that maybe wouldn't want an e-reader, but if they're not going to have access to the whole library collection for a few years, would, you know, grin and bear it for a little while. Yeah. Okay, we will move on.
To like the shortlisted teams?
For this edition, we do. For the 77 edition, I don't know if we have the original drawings. And I think if they, so that's a question I'll check with Judith about whether we would make those available, but I don't see why we wouldn't.
I think probably not for the qualifications portion, but once you shortlist and firms are doing, you know, design competition, it'd be really helpful to see what,
Right, you need that information.
yeah, how is this built, what's it,
Yeah.
why are those trusses, you know, the way they are, things like that. The other question I had was, I noticed there was, you have existing conditions floor plans. Do you know if those are in 3D or if those are like done in Revit or some kind of 3D software, or are those just strictly like flat CAD plans?
The existing, are those like the,
They're like floor plans of, I think, how it exists now.
oh, how it exists now? Yeah, I don't know how those were done.
Okay.
Judith Harris did those for us. I can ask her and let you know.
Yeah, I think, I mean, once again, it won't be critical for the qualifications portion, but moving forward,
Okay.
the firms will need to know. And while I'm on this riff, the site plan, if there's an accurate, up-to-date site plan, would be another piece of background information that, you know, the firms doing the design competition would need to,
Yeah.
would be beneficial to have.
That's something that I know we don't have, but I know that we need it for that phase.
Yeah.
And so we are talking with
A surveyor.
a surveyor
Yeah.
to try and get that in place by the time we get to the design
Perfect.
competition. But we don't have that now.
Yeah. Especially given trying to build up to the property line and, you know, it's a game of inches really, so you need, having accurate semi-accurate, at least, plans would be helpful. I mean, a lot of times we end up getting out Google Maps and going, I think the property line's there, is that a shadow, or, and rather not do that, given
Yeah.
the sensitivity of the.
Yeah, I've been surprised, months ago, almost a year ago, when we were starting this, I was trying to look at plans to find out exactly where the property line is in the parking lot. And it was way harder than I thought to find out. I just thought that there'd be one plan.
Yeah.
Everyone agrees on it, but there are a lot, so. So
And-
yeah, we'll
Yeah,
get
sometimes
that, we'll
it's-
get that
It
information.
can be disputed too,
The- There is a kind of peculiar issue in that there was land deeded to the town specifically for the purpose of the library, which goes out into the existing parking lot 14 feet.
A significant chunk,
It
yeah.
kind of goes out that way. On the other hand, parking in this town is sacrosanct. I mean, you take away parking, on top of which there's basically a road behind this building. It's not designated as a road, but if you see the cars coming up and out, there are traffic circulation issues there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can try to. So I think there's an interesting question. What's on the other side of that property line that belongs to the library? Well, that's land that belongs to the town. Well, the town owns the library.
Right.
So interesting issues there.
Okay, we'll keep it rolling.
Right, yeah.
Okay, we call this the Vermont Room because it's where we have stored our collection of Vermont authors and historic materials. This is a collection that is definitely shrinking and we don't need as much space for it. What this space is really used for is remote work and quiet study and distance learning. We got these nice fancy new tables with power with some ARPA funding that we got, which we really love and people make good use of, which is great. We have three small study or group meeting areas. So we have 1, 2, and there's a door right here. So 3 areas, 3 small meeting rooms that you can use for tutoring or Zooming or whatever you would use a small meeting room for. This one we allow people to book ahead of time. Those 2 are available on a first come, first served basis. They're all used pretty regularly. The 2 that are first come, first served basis will get used for like the whole day sometimes, if people are looking for a place to kind of camp out. One of the challenges with these rooms is that, again, sight lines, it's tough to see into them unless you walk all the way back here and look in. And there's no staff up here, so it's pretty easy for, again, people to lie down and sleep, teens to meet up here. Other things that we wouldn't want happening go on in here. So ideally, these rooms would be a lot more transparent.
Literally transparent.
Literally
Yeah.
transparent, yeah. Like it could be a glass cube. You shouldn't be doing anything in a library study room that can't be seen by everyone at all times. The sole exception is accessing telemedicine. And we have we call it a digital media lab. It's in this room back here. And that's where we have a lot of shared equipment for things like podcasting and recording and digitizing analog materials to digital. So people can reserve that space ahead of time and take advantage of those shared community resources. They can also reserve that room to speak with a psychiatrist or a doctor or something like that. It's the one space in the library that is private and can be made private for patrons, and it's appropriate because we always know who's in there because it's locked and people have to sign out the key and stuff like that. And we never used to have people requesting to use that space for those purposes. Since the pandemic started, we've had a big uptick in people wanting to access telemedicine privately at the library, and so that's something that we want to support, and that's important. Another challenge with this area is the acoustics. It's, again, right next to the loudest part of the library, so it's loud. And we would like to have, I guess you've seen a lot of spaces today that are for quiet study and remote work and distance learning, and they're all spread out, and it would be nice to have them all together in one area that does have good sound control. Any questions?
Dana, maybe afterwards we could get a key if people wanted to take a look at the digital media room.
I can open it up right now as long as no one's in there.
Yeah.
Great.
And for our square footage plan, did we envision giving that a little bit more space?
I think a little bit more space, but not a ton more space. We usually don't have more than 2 people that want to be in here at a time.
Because it's tiny.
Oh, you know what? I don't have it.
People can come up later on.
Ask them to toss it up.
We can look at it later. We can look at it later. We'll kind of keep moving.
Rather than try and talk about each little space individually. Okay, so this is MCTV's space, Millbury Community Television. They're a partner of ours, and we, well, I guess we don't really rent it to them because we don't charge them, but they're a tenant of the libraries. And it's a really wonderful partnership. Their staff does a lot of library programming, especially youth programming. So like they run a female filmmakers camp in the summer, teaching kids how to use all this equipment, stuff like that. And they also film local community events, select board meetings, school board meetings, stuff like that. So we both really benefit from the partnership. The community benefits from them having this space. But there's a lot of challenges with this space. The biggest one is that, sorry I'm so out of breath, being so pregnant and going upstairs results in this. I'll get my breath back in a minute. So the biggest challenge here is that there's no secondary egress. So we're really not even, we're allowed to have up to 5 people in here right now, assuming that we are working towards a solution and providing a secondary egress, which we are. So that is horrible that we don't have that secondary egress, and we'd like to add one. The other problem is that I'll let you guys go back into the offices and everything, there's these really low knee walls, so even though it kind of feels like a big space, the usable space is really not that much. So MCTV needs bigger office space, and the other group that uses this floor are the Friends of the Library. That's a separate organization that does fundraising for the library, and their primary mechanism for funding is through a book sale that they run every month. And so people donate books every day, and they sort those books every day. They're a really active group, and then once a month they bring all those books down to the community meeting room or out to the I don't know what you call that space.
Plaza.
The plaza in front of the town offices, and they hold a book sale. But their storage is woefully inadequate and really hunched and really uncomfortable and cramped. And a lot of the volunteers are older and at an age where having to work like this is really not fun for them. Plus, they're as far away from the community meeting room and the drop-off for donations as they could possibly be. So book trucks up and down the elevator all day, every day, putting more use on our elevator, getting stuck, all that stuff. So I think that's all I wanted to say about this space. These are our 2 storage closets. Storage throughout the building is just a major, major problem. We just do not have enough, period. So yeah, I'll let you guys, you can poke around.
Is it right to say that essentially we're on the 3rd floor
Yeah.
of the original 1924 building, more or less in the attic,
Yeah.
right here?
And there
so
used to be-
if you go up there, you're in the 77 edition, right?
Yeah.
And you can't get to the 88 edition
You
from
can't.
here.
Correct.
Go out onto the roof.
You can go out,
You-
not to the roof, through the eyebrow windows. Although I've never done that, but you can. And I know that there used to be a staircase over here. I don't know I guess when the 88 edition came on, that's when that went away. But I'm not 100% sure.
You'll see the bottom of where that staircase was in the children's librarian's offices.
Yeah.
So feel free to wander and take a look out that way especially.
Okay, so This is our children's room. It's the basement of all three, well no, of the 1924 edition and the 1988, or the 1924 original building and the 1988 edition. Some of the problems are self-evident just in the fact that it's a basement. There's not great light, there's not great air quality. In the same way that the ceiling is leaking, we have water coming up through the foundation as well. So there have been issues in the air, mold and air quality not great, and there's a lot of kids, so that's a challenge for us. One of the great and bad things about this space is that the library staff here are amazing, and they've done a great job. It's really brightly colored. Kids love it. It is a really active and engaged space, so I think a lot of people don't realize we can do a lot better for our children. So this rectangular space right here is the elementary school area. Sorry. You can feel it's just way too crowded. And then this area down here is our birth to kindergarten space. So we do have lots of kids come in, 6 weeks and older, just to get out of the house and have a place to wiggle around. That area down there towards the end is like the wiggle area where kids can engage in early learning activities and play with each other, and it's just way too small. We have daycares come in here all the time with a group of like 10, 11, 12 kids, and they cannot fit down there. There's just no way. Also, the boiler room is directly adjacent to that youngest kids area, and the mop closet is on the other side. And we do have problems, how to put it delicately, we have plumbing issues that have resulted in floods down in that area. So
Of raw sewage, yes?
Yes, of raw sewage. I guess there's no delicate way to put it. We've
Correct.
had raw sewage spilling in children's area in the past. And it's obviously all been cleaned up appropriately, but that's still a concern.
Effluent.
Effluent.
So we don't have enough space for either the birth to kindergarten collection or the elementary school collection. These are collections that every book you see has circulated in the past year. So we would like to be able to have, Middlebury could use a bigger youth collection for sure. We'd like to be able to expand it a little bit. Other things that go on in this space, crafts all the time. We distribute take and make crafts for kids to take home as well. We have supervised visits that take place down here. Parents come and try and do some work while their kids play. We wish we had space for elementary school students to do homework and socialize, but we really don't. We have our famous bathtub right over here. This is really important. Any architectural plans going forward have to include a space for the bathtub. It is beloved. Everyone has a memory of being in the bathtub when they were a kid. It used to be filled with stuffed animals. We stopped doing that in COVID, and now we use it for reading or playing games and stuff like that. So this is our youth reference or our youth desk. Sightlines down here, as throughout the building, are horrible. The librarian cannot see any kids in this area, which is a danger to the children. And they can't see anyone at that far end. Also a danger for the children. We're going to walk through here to the middle school area, and as we do, just take a peek. There's a doorway right here. Take a peek inside. This is, it used to be a stairwell. I mentioned upstairs, there used to be a stairwell. This is where it ended. And now it is the office space for 2 full-time librarians and a part-time librarian. Plus it is the only storage we have for the youth department. And when you look at it, you'll see what a problem storage and staff space are for us. Any questions? Actually, I'll leave it unlocked for the next tour. Okay, now we're in the middle school area, which is a lot more quiet because middle school is in session right now. So what happens here, middle schoolers come in, they get books, they use the computers, they do homework, they hang out. That chair back there is really popular. That's like the quiet reading nook. I wish we had way more, we still want sight lines, but we want kids to be able to feel like they're kind of in like a cozy little place. That's really popular, and I wish we had more spaces like that to encourage kids to sit and read, which is one of the great joys of a library, being able to sit and read. This space is also used for story times now because our community meeting room is so booked that we kind of have to use this as a programming space, which is not ideal. But it's okay, we can make it work. This whole basement area has a lot of columns all the way down, which makes it less flexible and difficult to kind of fit the shelving arrangement in there is not ideal. The middle school collection could also grow a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit. And again, we would like to have more space for the collection so we could have better display shelving.
So is the teen collection upstairs, is that high school?
Yeah. There's, it overlaps a little, but yeah, you can roughly think of it as birth to kindergarten, elementary, middle school, and then high school's upstairs. Any questions about this? Oh, sound management. Is a big problem down here, as you can tell. And right now it's not a huge problem, but when the middle schoolers are here, things that middle schoolers talk about and access on the internet are not always appropriate for elementary school students. And so that's a challenge. Because there is not sufficient space for elementary school students to sit and do homework or read in their area, they often come over here because there's all these great chairs and all this space. And then that makes middle schoolers not want to be here because they're not little kids. But there's all these little kids here, and so they feel like they don't want to be associated or whatever. So ideally, we would have more distinct spaces for each age group. They don't have to be in separate rooms, but they would just, I think, feel more distinct and have better sound containment. That would be much nicer for us. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna see if the community meeting room is available, and if it is, we'll go in there, and if it's not, I'll come back out here and we'll just talk about the community meeting room. This is our community meeting room. It gets a ton of use, both for library programming and for community groups. It's freely available to the public to book, and we have a ton of community groups that meet here, which has become a challenge for us over the past decade, I would say, as library programming increases. We really need we need a separate space for library programs that can accommodate messy activities and cooking and movement and stuff like that. We don't have a place like that right now. But we would love to have that so we can book a library program and a community program simultaneously. We wish this space were bigger. It can accommodate 75 people seated, and probably once a month we have programs that exceed that. And we'll either have standing room or we have to turn people away, which is not ideal. We have programs, a good example would be Happy Noon Year, which is held at 12 p.m. on New Year's Eve for Middlebury's youngest residents so that they can have like a countdown to noon and celebrate even though they can't stay up late. And when we have programs like that, this room is just completely packed. It's crazy. So we would like to have a bigger space. We would like to have way more outlets and energy or electricity ports in the floor and on the walls for programming. We would love to have higher ceilings. We have a really active and engaged film club that meets in here, and they show films right there using this projector. But because it's so low, if you have too many people, it's really hard to see the projector, or the projected image, I should say. So in short, this space needs to be bigger, it needs to be more flexible. It would be nice if there was more natural light, and it didn't have such like a basement-y feel. We also desperately need storage. That's probably my biggest concern with this space. All of these chairs, because we don't have storage, all of our chairs, programming supplies, it's actually looking pretty good right now. But stuff just accumulates in here because there's nowhere to put it, and it just makes the space feel smaller, and it makes the space feel kind of, I don't know, I hate to say dumpy, but it makes it feel like a library basement where stuff just gets dumped. And this is like one of the only places in Middlebury where we can get together for free as a community and, you know, engage in our civic democratic traditions, and I would love for it to feel worthy of those occasions and not like you're in someone's basement. We do have a tiny kitchen over here, which you can go look at. We really don't need a kitchen in here. The most people ever really do is serve coffee and cookies. And it's not big enough to do cooking classes, which would be cool. So it's kind of just like an in-between kitchen. It does not get a lot of use. And we have two restrooms through there, but those are not really available. This room is locked unless there's a program going on. And then there is an entrance through the garden, but it's at the bottom of a long ramp, which is really hard to maintain in the winter, especially because people use this space after hours and on Sundays and Saturdays. So for us to maintain, we shovel it or snow plow it ourselves. And so it's tough to guarantee that if it's snowing all day, if you book the space for a 7 p.m. meeting, we're not gonna stay and shovel at 6:30, so that's been a challenge for us too. I think that is everything I wanted to say about this room. But this is a good place to ask. This is the last stop on the tour, unless I'm forgetting something, which I don't think I am.
No.
So this is a good place to ask general questions as well, because it's quiet and we're not all on top of each other at once.
And before we go into that, Dana, how would you like to handle questions that might occur to people after the tour?
Yeah, just email them to me, and then I will post the answers on the RFQ website, and I'll let you know when I do that. So you can look there.
In terms of civic meetings or community meetings, is there any, do some meetings happen here that wouldn't happen in town hall, or is there some kind of synergy there?
So I think you would have to check with the town administration, but I think the only meetings that take place in that building tend to be like select board designated groups. So for example, the Addison County Republicans and the Addison County Democrats meet here. Not together, but obviously. Whereas like the Middlebury Energy Committee meets over in the town office building. I think that those spaces could be available to the public. They're not really set up to facilitate public use in the way that we are. We as the library have occasionally asked the town administration, hey, we have a group that we can't accommodate, they're small, can they use your small meeting room? And they'll say yes, but they're really not set up to accommodate public meetings.
We had our town meeting in the auditorium at the high school. It could accommodate, 300 people probably. The large meeting room in the town offices is pretty much as Dana said. If a number of years ago we had a downtown master planning process and that space was used, it was pre-COVID. And now that the large meeting room there is very much set up for the OWL hybrid meeting system, and they hate to touch anything, and move it around, so.
Yeah. And this is also used for much smaller groups. We have like condo boards that meet here. We have other local, that's not a good example. We also have like nonprofit boards that meet here regularly. The homeschoolers co-op uses this space. I mean, I could go on and on about all the different groups that use this space.
But part of the challenge is, as you saw on the second floor, the largest of those rooms can accommodate maybe 4.
Yeah, it's tight.
And so if we have a group of 6 or 8 who needs a meeting space, this is it. If they're in here and there's another group of 20, no place for them to go. So I think one of the things that we're envisioning is meeting rooms of varying sizes that could take place at the same time.
Yeah, and having one of those spaces be kind of like a conference room that is set up to handle hybrid meetings regularly, so that we're not having to set it up and take it down. Which is what we do. We do have an owl, and we can accommodate hybrid meetings in here, but it's a pain to set up and take down. Excuse me. Great. Thanks everyone
Thank
so
you
much.
very
I hope
much.
this was helpful information, and as Joe said, you're free to check out the back garden, and that, which is like right through there. When you exit the side door, it'll be on your left. And you're also welcome to go poke around in the space between the 1980 edition and the Marquis Cinema.
Or if you want to take a peek in that media lab room, it's tiny, but
Oh, yeah, if you want to take a look at the media lab, you can just
Ask at the front
reference
desk for the key.
And they'll give it to you, you can go and take a look. And, yep, I think that's it. I guess I can lead us back out to the side door.
yeah.